My in-laws handed me a choice at 6 in the morning. Burn my career to cover her crime, or watch their family shatter. I chose neither. "Where is my corporate ledger card, Julianne?" I did not yell. I did not move from the kitchen threshold. I just held my phone out, screen facing the breakfast bar where 3 brand-new leather duffel bags sat on the granite counter with the store security tags still attached. My father-in-law, Hector, slammed his coffee mug onto the table hard enough to splash dark liquid over his morning paper. "Don't you dare come into my home at 6 in the morning barking at my daughter like she's a criminal, Nolan. You drop that tone right now." She took $16,800 out of my firm's escrow line while I slept upstairs, I said, looking Hector dead in the eye. "So the tone stays." Julianne did not even flinch. She sat on the kitchen stool in a silk robe, casually buttering a piece of toast for her 8-year-old son, Toby. She looked up at me with that signature practiced pity she used whenever someone called her out. "Nolan, honestly, you're making a scene in front of the children." It was a temporary transaction. I was going to explain it once the kids were packed. "Packed for what?" my fiancée, Clara, asked as she rushed down the stairs behind me, pulling her hair back into a ponytail. Her eyes were wide, scanning the kitchen, the new luggage, the paper receipts scattered across the island. "Julianne, what did you do?" "I secured our vacation," Julianne said, taking a slow bite of her toast. "The kids have had a devastating year since the divorce. They needed this trip to the coast. Nolan has multiple business accounts. He won't even notice it for a week." $16,800, Clara yelled, her voice breaking. "Are you insane?" "Lower your voice in this house," Hector roared, standing up to his full 6'2" height, squaring his shoulders toward me. "Nobody is insane here. Julianne made a judgment call for her family. Nolan is a senior risk partner at an asset firm. He handles millions every day. He can balance the books for a few days until we sort it out." I looked at Hector. Then I looked at Julianne. Then I let out a single, quiet breath. "You don't understand what you grabbed out of my wallet, Julianne," I said, my voice dropping an octave into absolute stillness. "That wasn't my personal card. That was an automated corporate compliance line. It's tied directly to a federal escrow registry. The moment a transaction over $5,000 is flagged outside my home district without a signed clearance token, the fraud unit doesn't just email me. It auto-dispatches a regulatory audit report to the district attorney's financial crimes division." Julianne's hand froze midair. The toast hovered an inch from her mouth. "What did you just say?" Hector asked, his booming voice suddenly losing its weight. "I didn't file a report," I said, staring directly into Julianne's pale face. "The system filed it automatically at 4:15 this morning, while you were buying first-class airline seats and luxury resort packages. In less than 45 minutes, state officers are going to show up at this front door to verify the physical card." Silence hit the room like a physical blow. "Nolan," Hector whispered, his eyes narrowing in pure panic. "You stop that report right now. Call them back. Tell them it was a mistake." "I can't," I said, "and even if I could, I wouldn't." The tension in the kitchen didn't just rise, it snapped. Julianne dropped her toast onto her plate. Her face turned from smug defiance to a ghost-white mask of terror. "Dad!" she shrieked, jumping off the bar stool. "Dad, make him fix it! He's lying! He's doing this to hurt me!" "Fix it?" Clara yelled, stepping between her sister and me. "She stole from my fiancé while we were sleeping under your roof, Dad." She went into our guest room at 3 in the morning, unzipped his briefcase, and stole his card. "She borrowed it!" Hector shouted, his face flushing a deep, dangerous crimson as he pointed a trembling finger at my chest. "She borrowed it for her children! Nolan, you listen to me. You call your firm right now and tell them you authorized it. You tell them you gave her permission. If you put a criminal charge on my daughter's record, you are dead to this family. Do you hear me? Dead." I looked at the man who was supposed to be my father-in-law in 6 months. I looked at his daughter, who had spent her entire adult life burning down everyone else's peace and letting her father build bridges out of other people's money to save her. "I don't lie on federal compliance filings, Hector," I said softly. "Not for anyone. And certainly not for a thief." "Don't you call her a thief," Hector screamed, taking 2 aggressive steps toward me. Before he could reach my space, I didn't step back. I stood my ground, my hands resting calmly in my pockets, my jaw set. I had spent 12 years evaluating corporate predators and high-level fraudsters in courtroom depositions. I knew how bullies acted when their narrative shattered. They didn't get quiet, they got loud. "Step back, Hector," I said, my tone flat, razor sharp, and completely void of fear. "You've spent 30 years covering for her mistakes. You've paid off her unpaid leases, you've paid off her forged signatures, and you've forced Clara to quiet down every single time Julianne took something that wasn't hers. But you don't control my signature, and you don't control my ledger." Clara's mother, Beatrice, came hurrying into the kitchen from the back porch, her hands trembling as she wiped them on her apron. "What is all this screaming? What is happening?" "Your daughter stole $16,800 from Nolan," Clara said, her voice shaking with a mix of rage and heartbreak. "And Dad is trying to force Nolan to lie to the authorities to cover for her." "It was a loan," Julianne wailed, dropping onto the floor beside her luggage, wrapping her arms around her knees as if she were the victim of a home invasion. "I was going to pay it back over 6 months. I just needed the tickets before they sold out." $16,000 over 6 months? Clara scoffed, looking at her sister with pure disgust. "Julianne, you don't even have a job. You've been living off Dad's pension and Trent's child support payments for 2 years. "That's enough," Hector roared. "Clara, shut your mouth. You stand by your sister." "No," Clara said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was solid. She walked over to my side, slipping her hand into mine. I felt her fingers shaking, but her grip was tight. "I stand by Nolan." Hector looked like he had been struck across the face. For 30 years, his household had run on a single rule: protect Julianne at all costs, no matter who gets hurt, no matter how much money vanishes, no matter how many lies have to be told. Clara had been conditioned since childhood to stay quiet, to give up her birthday savings, to let Julianne have the better bedroom, to pretend Julianne's outbursts were just stress. Seeing Clara stand beside me, refusing to fold under his glare, broke something in Hector's mind. "You're turning my own daughter against me," Hector growled, his eyes fixed on me with pure hatred. "You came into this house with your city job and your expensive suit and your self-righteous rules, and you think you can destroy my family?" "Your daughter destroyed your family the second she unzipped my bag at 3 a.m, I replied. "I'm just the only person in this room who isn't afraid to state the obvious." Outside, the faint sound of tires rolling over the gravel driveway echoed through the open window. A moment later, red and blue lights flickered faintly against the oak trees in the front yard. Julianne gasped, scrambling to her feet in a panic. "Dad, the police! They're here!" Beatrice burst into tears, covering her mouth with both hands. "Oh, sweet Lord! Hector, do something!" Hector turned back to me, his chest heaving, his face dark with fury. "This is your last chance, Nolan. Walk out there and tell them it was a personal misunderstanding. Tell them you gave her the card. If you don't, I swear to God you will never set foot on this property again, and you will never be part of this family." I looked at him for 3 long seconds. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't lose my cool. I simply pulled my phone from my pocket, unlocked the screen, and displayed the digital transaction trail. "The police aren't here because I called them on a whim, Hector," I explained calmly. The bank flagged 3 transactions made at 3:34 in the morning from a luxury boutique website based out of Miami, followed by 2 airline reservations under Julianne's full legal name and the birth certificates of her 2 kids. Do you really think an officer is going to believe I authorized $16,000 in child airfare under her name without my signature on a third-party authorization form? Hector's mouth opened, but no sound came out. "I'm a financial risk investigator," I continued, taking a step toward the front hallway. "My entire life is built on tracking paper trails that people like Julianne think they can erase with tears. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to go brief the deputies." I walked down the hallway, leaving the kitchen in total, suffocating silence. Clara followed right beside me. When I opened the heavy wooden front door, 2 uniformed county deputies were stepping up onto the porch. The lead officer, a tall deputy with silvering hair and a clipboard in his hand, looked at me, then at Clara, and then down at his notes. "Nolan Vance?" the deputy asked. "Yes, deputy," I said clearly. "I'm Nolan Vance. This is Clara Miller. We received an automated high-value fraud alert from First National Compliance Registry regarding an account under your name. Transactions originating from this address between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. "That's correct," I said. "My corporate ledger card was taken from my leather bag inside this house without my knowledge or consent. $16,800 was charged to various merchants." Before the deputy could respond, the front door slammed open and Hector pushed his way out onto the porch, his arms waving in the air. Deputy, listen to me. This is a minor domestic dispute. There's been a massive misunderstanding between family members. The silver-haired deputy didn't even blink. He raised a firm hand, pointing it directly at Hector's chest. Sir, step back inside the residence until I ask for your statement. This is my home, Hector bellowed. I have a right to speak in my own driveway. Sir, the deputy's voice turned icy, professional, and entirely unbothered by Hector's stature. If you take one more step toward me while I'm conducting an investigation, I will detain you for obstruction right now. Do you understand? Hector froze. The sight of a uniform refusing to obey his loud authority was something he clearly hadn't experienced in decades. His jaw twitched, but he took one slow step back toward the doorway, his eyes burning into me with toxic rage. Mr. Vance, the deputy turned back to me. Do you know who made these transactions? Yes, I said without a single second of hesitation. Julianne Miller. She is inside the house. From behind the screen door, Julianne let out a shriek. I didn't steal it. He gave it to me. The deputy looked past me toward the door, then wrote something down on his pad. Did you provide written or verbal consent for Miss Miller to use your corporate line, Mr. Vance? None, I replied. The card was stored in a zipped interior pocket of my briefcase inside the guest bedroom upstairs. She entered the room while my fiancée and I were asleep. And are you prepared to sign a formal affidavit of non-authorization and press full charges? The deputy asked, looking me squarely in the eyes. Beside me, Clara squeezed my hand tightly. I looked down at her for a brief second. Her eyes were filled with tears, but she gave me a small, resolute nod. She was done living in the shadows of her sister's chaotic wake. She was ready for reality. Yes, deputy, I said in a firm, unwavering voice. I am signing the affidavit, and I am pressing full charges. The events that unfolded over the next 3 hours felt like a slow-motion demolition of the illusion the Miller family had maintained for 30 years. The deputies entered the home and conducted a formal interview with Julianne in the living room. Within 12 minutes, her story collapsed under its own absurdity. First, she told the deputy that I had left the card on the kitchen counter with a note telling her to treat herself. When the deputy asked to see the note, she claimed she had thrown it away in the outdoor bin. When the deputy pointed out that the card was a business line registered to a corporate tax ID number that required two-factor mobile authentication for initial setup, she broke down, weeping hysterically and blaming her ex-husband for her emotional distress. Hector tried to intervene 4 separate times. By the 4th time, the second deputy physically escorted him to the front porch and stood beside him, preventing him from entering the room while Julianne was read her rights. Because the total amount exceeded $10,000, the offense was classified as a grand larceny and financial identity fraud felony under state law. Julianne was not simply given a summons. She was placed in handcuffs on the front lawn in front of her children and her weeping mother. As the patrol car pulled out of the driveway, with Julianne sitting in the back seat, Hector stood on the gravel, his chest unbuttoned, his face pale, pointing at me like a madman. "You satisfied?" he roared, his voice cracking with emotion. "You happy now, Mr. Big Shot? You put the mother of 2 young children in jail over numbers on a screen." I walked over to my truck, unlocked the passenger door for Clara, and set our suitcases in the back. Then I turned around and walked back to where Hector was standing under the oak trees. "The numbers on that screen represent 3 years of my work, Hector," I said, my voice steady and cold. "And more importantly, they represent the boundary your family should have set 20 years ago. You didn't protect Julianne by covering up her crimes. You just made sure that when she finally hit a wall, it would be a legal one. Don't blame me for the wreck. You built the runway." Without waiting for his response, I got into the truck, started the engine, and pulled out onto the main road. The drive back to the city was 2 hours of heavy, processing silence. The noise of the morning, the screaming, the police radios, the crying, faded into the rhythmic hum of the tires on the asphalt. Clara sat in the passenger seat, staring out at the passing trees, her hands folded tightly in her lap. "Are you all right?" I asked gently, reaching over to place my right hand over hers. She looked at me, her eyes red-rimmed, but her expression remarkably clear. "I feel like I just woke up from a 20-year trance," she whispered. "My whole life, Whenever Julianne did something terrible, my dad would gather us around the table and say, "We are Millers. We protect each other from the outside world." But he never protected me from her. When she stole $3,000 from my college fund to pay off her credit cards, my dad told me to be the bigger person. When she crashed my car and fled the scene, he made me sign an insurance form saying I was driving. She turned her body toward me, her eyes searching mine. "Nolan, do you think I'm a horrible sister for not stopping you?" "Clara," I said, pulling the truck over to the shoulder of the highway, turning off the radio and looking directly into her eyes. "You didn't put your sister in handcuffs. Her choices did that. Enabling someone isn't love, it's cowardice. Your father thought he was loving her, but all he was doing was buying her freedom with other people's peace. You didn't betray your family today. You saved yourself." Tears spilled down her cheeks, but she didn't turn away. She leaned across the center console and rested her forehead against my shoulder. I held her there for 5 minutes while the highway traffic rushed past us, offering her the solid, unyielding protection she had never received from the man who raised her. When we got back to our apartment in the city, the true war began. By 5 in the afternoon, my phone was a graveyard of missed calls and frantic text messages. Hector had called 14 times. Beatrice had left 5 long, rambling voicemails weeping about how Toby and Maya were asking where their mother was. Then came the messages from extended family. Clara's Aunt Beth sent a 5-paragraph message detailing how disappointed she was that Clara had allowed an outsider to dictate family matters. Clara's cousin Luke sent a brief, aggressive text telling me that if I ever showed my face at a family gathering again, he would personally ensure I left in an ambulance. I saved every single message, every text, every voicemail, every email. I created a dedicated file folder on my secure cloud drive labeled Miller Investigation, Harassment. "What are you doing with those?" Clara asked, setting 2 mugs of tea on my desk. "Documenting witness tampering and intimidation," I replied calmly. When a criminal case is active, family members attempting to pressure the victim or the witness into dropping charges or altering testimony can be charged with felony obstruction. If your father or your cousin takes one step over the line, I won't argue with them. I'll hand this folder directly to the prosecutor. Clara looked at the screen, then at me. A small, genuine smile touched her lips. "You really don't mess around, do you?" "I protect what's mine, Clara," I said, taking her hand. "And right now, our future is what's mine. I won't let a toxic family dynamic drag us into their swamp." 2 days later, I received a phone call from an unknown number. I answered it on speaker while sitting in my home office. "Nolan?" a tired, deep male voice asked. "Speaking. Who is this?" "It's Trent, Julianne's ex-husband." I paused, leaning forward in my chair. "Hello, Trent." There was a long sigh on the other end of the line. "I heard what happened on Saturday morning. Clara told me." "I see," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "If you're calling to ask me to pull the charges for the sake of the kids, Trent, I'll save you the breath." "No," Trent said quickly. "God, no. I'm calling to say thank you." I blinked, surprised. "Thank you?" "Nolan, for 6 years during our marriage, Julianne stole thousands of dollars from my business accounts, opened secret credit cards in my name, and forged my signature on 2 separate loan applications," Trent said, his voice raw with years of buried anger. "Every time I tried to confront her, Hector would come over to my house, stand in my living room, and threaten to ruin my business if I went to the police. He gaslit me into believing I was insane. When we got divorced, Hector paid off the court evaluator to make it look like I was financially unstable so Julianne could get custody." I listened silently as Trent let out a ragged breath. "When Clara told me you stood up to Hector in his own kitchen and handed the deputies the transaction records without blinking, I almost cried, man," Trent said. "You did what I was too terrified to do for 6 years. The prosecutor's office called me this afternoon because they saw a pattern of financial irregularity during our divorce proceedings. They're subpoenaing her past records." "They'll find plenty," I said. She was comfortable because she thought nobody would ever cross the line. "She picked the wrong guy this time," Trent said. "If you need anything, court statements, records from our divorce, testimony about how Hector operates, you call me. I'll be there in 20 minutes. "I appreciate that, Trent," I said. "Take care of Toby and Maya." They're the only innocent people in this house. I will, he said. For the first time in years, I think I actually can. The legal process moving forward was relentless and clean. Julianne spent 2 days in the county jail before Hector managed to pull together $8,000 to post her bail, taking out a high-interest cash advance on his own truck to clear the bond. When she was released, she was met not with a triumphant family reunion, but with a formal notice of corporate audit. Because the account she had targeted was a registered escrow account under my firm's risk umbrella, my legal department didn't just sit back. They assigned a senior corporate prosecutor to assist the local district attorney. Within 2 weeks, the charges were upgraded from basic grand larceny to state-level wire fraud and identity theft due to the use of electronic routing numbers across state lines for the luxury boutique purchases. Hector tried everything to stop it. He went to my firm's downtown office building, demanding to see my managing partner to report my unprofessional conduct. My managing partner, a ruthless former federal prosecutor named Richard Vance, no relation, just a shared ironclad work ethic, had security escort Hector off the premises before handing the lobby surveillance tapes directly to the police as additional evidence of witness intimidation. When Hector realized he couldn't bully my firm, he tried to use the wedding as leverage. A month after the incident, Beatrice called Clara from a blocked number, weeping hysterically. "Clara, please, your father is sick with worry. He says if Nolan doesn't drop these charges by the end of the month, he will formally disown you, cancel the financial gift he promised for the wedding venue, and forbid anyone in the family from attending." Clara was sitting on the sofa when she took the call. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She looked down at her engagement ring, then spoke into the phone with a quiet, icy precision that made my heart swell with pride. "Mom," Clara said, "tell Dad he doesn't have to worry about canceling his wedding gift. We canceled the reservation at his country club 3 weeks ago. We booked a private garden downtown, and we're paying for every single cent ourselves. And as for disowning me, he doesn't get to fire me from a family I'm voluntarily resigning from." She hung up the phone and blocked the number immediately. The following 4 months were the quietest, most productive months of our lives. Without the constant background noise of Julianne's endless emergencies, the sudden car repairs, the unpaid rent crises, the late-night domestic fights, our life became remarkably peaceful. We spent our weekends planning our wedding, focusing on our careers, and building a foundation that wasn't built on eggshells. In November, Julianne's legal counsel realized they were facing an unwinnable battle. The digital trail was flawless, IP addresses matching Hector's home router, camera footage from the local boutique where she had attempted to pick up a luxury handbag using my digital confirmation code, and the clear testimony of both myself and Clara. Faced with a potential 5-year prison sentence, Julianne accepted a mandatory plea bargain. She pleaded guilty to 2 counts of felony financial fraud. She was sentenced to 2 years of supervised probation, 300 hours of community service, mandatory psychological counseling, and full financial restitution of $16,800, to be paid in monthly installments directly to my firm's legal department. In addition, the family court judge presiding over Trent's custody agreement reviewed the felony conviction and immediately modified the custody arrangement, granting Trent primary physical custody of Toby and Maya, while Julianne was restricted to supervised weekend visitation until she completed her court-ordered rehabilitation programs. The day the sentencing was finalized, Hector looked like an old man. He sat on the bench outside the courtroom, his head in his hands, completely abandoned by the system he had spent decades trying to manipulate. For the first time in his life, his noise couldn't save his daughter. His anger couldn't rewrite the law. 6 months after the trial ended, Clara and I were married. It wasn't a grand 300-person spectacle designed to impress local country club members. It was 42 people in a sunlit botanical greenhouse downtown. Trent was there with Toby and Maya, both kids dressed up and smiling, enjoying a calm afternoon without screaming or drama. My colleagues from the firm were there, along with Clara's real friends, the ones who had seen her suffer in silence for years and were finally watching her breathe. Beatrice came alone, sitting quietly in the back row during the ceremony. She didn't cause a scene. She didn't make a speech. Before the reception started, she walked up to Clara in the courtyard, handed her a small silver locket that had belonged to Clara's grandmother, and gave her a long, silent hug. "I'm sorry," Beatrice whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I was too weak to stop him." "I know, Mom," Clara said gently, holding the locket tightly. "But I'm not." Hector didn't come. Julianne was forbidden by her probation officer from being within 500 feet of me or Clara. As the sun set over the greenhouse, casting a warm, golden light across the stone patio, Clara and I stood near the fountain, drinks in hand, watching our friends laugh and dance. My editor, who had helped me navigate the corporate audit paperwork during the initial chaos, walked over and clinked her glass against mine. "To clean balance sheets and absolute boundaries, Nolan." "To absolute boundaries," I replied, pulling Clara close against my side. Clara looked up at me, her eyes sparkling under the string lights overhead. "Best decision you ever made," she whispered. "Which one?" I asked with a smile. "Marrying you or pressing charges?" She laughed, a real clear sound that carried over the music. "Both, because without the second one, we wouldn't be standing here today." She was right. People think that family loyalty means endurance. They think that love requires you to swallow disrespect, absorb financial ruin, and let toxic people use your life as a buffer against their own destruction. But real strength isn't about how much abuse you can take without breaking. It's about knowing exactly where your boundary sits, drawing it in concrete, and letting the people who cross it deal with the wall they hit. Julianne thought she was taking a card out of an unzipped bag at 3 a.m. She thought she was taking $16,000 from a man who could afford to lose it. What she actually did was give me the key to free the woman I loved from a lifetime of emotional imprisonment. And as I looked down at my wife dancing under the greenhouse lights, completely free, completely safe, and completely loved, I knew I would draw that line again every single time.